are involved. In Numbers chapter 5, we have this really, really odd portion of Scripture. Like almost anybody's definition of odd, this comes into that category. And we call this the trial of the sotah. That is the adulteress or the suspicioned adulteress. Okay? So here's the scenario. We have a man who is married, and he suspects that his wife has been unfaithful, but he has no proof. Everybody following so far? So he thinks that she's been unfaithful, but he can't prove it. There's no witnesses. Now the Torah says, before you can condemn anybody, you have to have at least 2 or 3 witnesses. Okay? But he just has suspicion. Now there may be some legitimacy to his suspicion. There may be large blocks of unaccounted time that she can't account for. Okay? That may be one reason. Or maybe, he finds a note in her pocket from some guy. So hopefully there are reasons for his suspicion. At least hope that there are, other than just this being conjured up in his mind without any kind of basis. Okay. So we pick up the reading now. We're going to pick up the reading in verse 11 of chapter 5. It says this: "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a man's wife goes astray and behaves unfaithfully toward him, and a man lies with her carnally, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and it is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there are no witnesses against her, nor was she caught. If the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, who has defiled herself, or if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest." Remember I said that the priesthood comes into play here. "He shall bring the offering required for her, 1/10 of an ephah of barley. He shall pour no oil on it and put no frankincense on it, because it is a grain offering of jealousy, an offering for remembering, for bringing iniquity to remembrance." Now what's interesting is, if you go back and look in Leviticus, for this same grain offering, he would bring frankincense and oil on it, but for this particular one, he's not supposed to. Okay? If you look at Leviticus, for this same offering, not related to this, he is supposed to put frankincense and oil on it. Verse 16, "And the priest shall bring her near and set her before the Lord." Now, that language is tabernacle language, because we know that the Lord is resident in the tabernacle and then later the temple. "The priest shall take holy water in an earthen vessel." Now that becomes interpretive at this point, because we're not exactly told. We're told that it's holy water. So the only water in the temple that seems to be considered holy, or the only water that we know of, is the laver. Okay? So we know that when you walk into the temple precincts, or the tabernacle precincts, the first thing that you would encounter would be the laver, which is a huge bowl that the priest would wash themselves in. In fact, those of you how many of you have been to the Temple Institute in Jerusalem? Anybody recently? One, two, okay, a couple. They actually have their view of the laver is this huge bronze. It holds many, many gallons of water, and there are spigots around the side of it, probably a good 15 or so that you could turn on one of these faucets, and you could have 15 priests, in a sense, wash their hands from the water coming out of it.
Well, one for each tribe.
Yeah, one for each tribe is 12, yeah. So, that's one rendition of this. That's how the Temple Institute pictures it. So you could actually have 12 individuals standing around in a circle, and each of them washing their hands under their own faucet from this laver. But water is to be taken from this laver. That's the only water that's considered holy. sanctified or set apart. It says this then, and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the tabernacle and put it into the water. Then the priest shall stand the woman before the Lord. And now the text reads, uncover the woman's head, which most of the translations then say that it's the loosening of her hair. Take the hair and let the hair down. Okay, which assumes that she has her hair somewhat up. Okay, so then it says, then the priest shall stand the woman before the Lord, uncover the woman's head, and put the offering for remembering in her hands, which is the grain offering of jealousy. And the priest shall have in his hand the bitter water that brings a curse. And the woman shall put her, and the priest shall put her under oath, and say to the woman, if no man has lain with you, and you have not gone astray to uncleanness while under your husband's authority, be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. But if you have gone astray while under the husband's authority, and if you have defiled yourself, and some man other than your husband has lain with you, then the priest shall put the woman under the oath of the curse, and he shall say to the woman, quote, the Lord make you a curse and an oath among your people, when the Lord makes your thigh rot and your belly swell. And may this water that causes the curse to go into your stomach, and make your belly swell and your thigh rot. Now, I have made the point in the notes that I think that the thigh is a euphemism for the procreative organ, because it's used that way elsewhere in the Hebrew Scriptures, of both men and women. Okay, so something here is happening biologically, physiologically. Okay, and we can get to that in just a moment. Then it says this, the woman shall say, Amen, so be it. Then the priest shall write these curses in a book, a sefer, a scroll, and he shall scrape them off into the bitter waters. Now we have, in this water, we have dust from the tabernacle floor, and then the curse or the oath that she was put under, written on a scroll, and that then washed off into this mixture as well. So as to be the oath is now part of the mixture that she's going to drink. So then the priest shall take the grain offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, shall wave the offering before the Lord, and bring it to the altar. And the priest shall take a handful of the offering as its memorial portion, burn it on the altar, and afterward make the woman drink the water. When he has made her drink the water, then it shall be, if she has defiled herself and behaved unfaithfully toward her husband, that the water that brings a curse will enter her, and become bitter, and her belly will swell, and her thigh will rot, and the woman will become a curse amongst her people. But if the woman has not defiled herself, and is clean, then she shall be free and may conceive children. So the implication is, if she drinks this water, and it will cause her to not be able to conceive. Verse 29, this is the law of jealousy when a wife, while under her husband's authority, goes astray and defiles herself. Or when the spirit of jealousy comes upon a man, and he becomes jealous of his wife, then he shall stand the woman before the Lord, and the priest shall execute all this Torah upon her. Then the man shall be freed from iniquity, but the woman shall bear her guilt. All right. I told you, an odd text. Okay. Now, let me just add this. Without a priesthood, and without a tabernacle, this is not able to be employed. Okay, so this is no longer something that can be done because we don't have a priesthood and we don't have a tabernacle. So, but when the tabernacle stood and when the temple stood, this was capable of being enacted. Okay. So let's stop here and let's take some questions from you guys, because this is an odd text. I'll be the first to admit that. Yes.
Anything happen to the guy?
Everybody always asks that. There's no indication that a woman can bring this to in regards to a man and ask him for if he'd been unfaithful in that regard. Not with this kind of a
so this
procedure.
is basically a willing, thing, but not that she was forced into doing something or whatever. It's like if she was willingly doing this with the other person.
Yes, this is not a forced issue.
I wonder if that would be ever brought up in that case. Well, I was forced to or something.
Yeah, if she says that she was raped or violated, that'd be a different issue. This is consensual.
She still can bring charges against her husband by taking him to the gate
Yes.
Or chanting elders.
Right.
And slapping in the face with their shoe.
Right, that's another whole, yeah, she can bring accusation against her husband by going to the city gates. Not to the priest and not to the temple, but she can go to the city gates. That's another whole scenario. So she can bring accusation, but it would be at the city gates. Hold on a second, one over here and I'll come back, go ahead.
What if, you know, out of fear of going through the whole process, kind of like last minute, she comes clean and apologizes.
If she comes clean and confesses, then she's an adulteress and she's to be stoned. That would be that's the Torah's remedy, because both of them have to be stoned. Although it's interesting,
Because there wouldn't be witnesses.
there's no witnesses. So there's no witnesses.
Yeah.
So even if she confesses, yeah, that's a tough one because there hasn't been any witnesses. You can testify against yourself. That's one. Unless there was another witness, I don't know that you'd be able to.
It would have to be the man.
That'd be the man. He would have to agree that he was involved and witness. They'd have to witness against each other. Which, by the way, in modern law, courts cannot compel a spouse to testify. This would be but in this situation, you'd have to get the man who she had relations with to testify against her, but he'd be incriminating himself as well, and he'd be stoned. So I don't know. That's an interesting question. If she confesses, that's one witness. It doesn't really say.
How does this kind of correlate? How would that kind of correlate maybe with the prophet that was an unfaithful wife?
Oh, Hosea, which is why we read Hosea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as
See, that's the
because he said, I mean, he pretty much said, you know, you got to stop it now,
right.
and I'm gonna like restore you.
Yeah, the issue is this. You really have to have 2 or 3 witnesses. You either have to catch them in the act or have 2 or 3 witnesses. And a person's testimony by itself is one, but that doesn't meet the criteria. Hold on, right here, then come back. Yeah.
Was it intended to be a private matter?
Yes. Although she's brought in the tent of meeting, so I mean, you out the front of the tent of meeting, so you would think that word would get around. I mean, I don't know how it could be intended to be private. Would it become known? Yes, eventually. I mean, I can't think that that word wouldn't get out that you know people talking and. But the ordeal itself is meant to be private. In fact, here's what's really cool about it. In one way, is that it takes it out of the hands of the husband and puts it into the hands of God to decide and say, okay, look. God has given this remedy for finding out if this is true. And, the priest then brings her before God, and it's as if God makes the decision. And then physiologically something happens to her. Well, 1 and 2, and then go ahead.
I think we tend to focus on the woman, or at least in this particular dialogue, but I think I read it more as the jealousy of the husband, the spirit of jealousy.
Yes.
And I think of it almost as a protection to the woman, because how many of us, even when I was in high school and college, I had jealousy issues with girlfriends, and some of them were unfounded. So how many women in history have been abused verbally, emotionally, physically by some man who actually just got it in his head, she's running around with it. You know what I mean? So now she's going to, there's going to be mean to him, and this provides a methodology to go, well, hey, if you think that's true, let's take it to the priest, let's take it to God, and get this thing squashed right now.
Right.
And I would hope that it protected her and relieved him and caused the marriage to come back to wholeness.
Yeah, good point.
I was thinking of when Yeshua is confronted with the woman who was caught in adultery.
Yes.
And everybody comes to the accuser and stuff. I'm assuming those guys were all eyewitnesses or something. And he doesn't, he's like, he blows their minds. So we're likely.
And that particular narrative in John is fascinating for this reason. and this is a take from others, that you were supposed to rigorously examine the witnesses to try to discredit them. Okay?